Let me first thank Eugene for making this video. He raises some important questions. And of course, these are questions that many of us have had on our minds in the past few months as we've noticed an uprising or an uptake in the number of alleged female MRAs, or women, at the very least, women interested in the men's rights movement. Now, he does raise some important questions, and I think we possess the tools, or rather the knowledge, to answer some of these questions. So the big question, to my mind, is, are there criteria, do criteria exist that would allow us to correctly, for the most part, assess whether a female MRA is legitimate or not? In other words, what's her angle? What angle is she coming from? And I think we actually do have the knowledge to make a fairly objective assessment based on what we know about female psychology and female biology. Now, admittedly, some of this is theory crafting, but all solid ideas start within the realm of theory crafting. And I think, like I said, we do have that knowledge. So let's start. Eugene does mention traditionalists, and of course, we've been through the I think we've been through more than enough of the debate on traditionalism and where it sits within the MRA or what have you. Suffice to say, traditionalists are not interested per se in men's rights. They usually have a different angle. Now, that's not to say, I wouldn't say in defense of them, but in partial defense of them, some traditionalists are actually reasonably intelligent. I know of at least one traditionalist woman who is quite smart, and she understands the situation quite well. It's simply her conclusion that the traditionalist setup, the structure that we had in previous decades or centuries, is the best thing we have available, and there's nothing better than that. And there never will be anything better than that, so we might as well stick with that. But she actually understands the situation. However, she's not a men's rights activist, and she is, by all accounts, a traditionalist. So anyway, let's move past that. So we know traditionalist women are not interested in men's rights. So what are the criteria? A couple of the comments in the video that Eugene made hint at possibilities, and I think these hints are perhaps even valid proof in some cases of what the angle is, or what angle she's coming from. So I'm going to say the following, that there are a few criterion points that could help us make a reasonable assessment as to whether or not a female who professes that she is an MRA or for men's rights is legitimate or not. The two main factors, it seems, in my observations, are the following, and they're not evenly distributed by any means, but let's talk about them. The one factor is what I can only call male brain wiring. This seems to be far and few between. You don't come across it very often. I'll talk about Girl Rights One in a second, but yeah, she is an indication of male. She has male brain wiring by her own admission. She at least feels that way, and we see the work that she does. The second, much more probable cause, that was mentioned in some of the comments that I would agree with, is females, not necessarily with male brain wiring, since that's such a rare thing to encounter, but with male progeny, that is, sons. Females, mothers with sons. Now, we understand, and Eugene correctly points this out in the video, that a woman's major interest is herself primarily, and her secondary major interest is her direct progeny, that which was pulled forth from her vagina, essentially. That is her most women's main interest in life, or main interest, and it sounds like, but certainly the driving force behind her motives, her own pleasure, her own comfort, her own happiness, if you will, and to a somewhat lesser extent, her own direct progeny, be it male or female. Now, let's not make blanket statements here. We all know that the love a mother allegedly bears for her direct child, her direct progeny, is a highly inconsistent thing at best. So that's all to be taken with a grain of salt. But for the sake of argument, let's assume mothers love their children, right? We all know, we have ample evidence to refute that, at least in a consistent way. But yes, let's assume mothers love their children. So of course a mother will love her son, even though it's been born with the kid's been born with the wrong genitalia. But given the fact that her secondary interest in life is to make sure that her direct progeny does well, it makes sense in some way, in a rather skewed way, that that kind of woman would take interest in the MRA. It's not surprising at all in some ways. However, that of course does not disqualify the possibility that prior to the conception of her male progeny, that self-same woman was engaging in the same guileful and manipulative tactics that we've come to know from women with regards to men. Manipulation, using sex as a weapon, so on and so forth. So she might continue to treat her husband. We know most women don't bear no love for their husbands in any sense that men understand love to be. She might continue to treat her husband, her male husband, as a pure utility, or treat him like trash, or their boyfriends or previous boyfriends, and so on and so forth. That all changes because, like I said, that the child is of her blood. It's been pulled forth from her womb. So it changes everything. So of course she has interest in that child. Now, some women with a modicum of intelligence might realize that the men, particularly in Western society, but all over the world, don't have it really good, and so she might notice that her son is getting some rough treatment, and so she might investigate the issue, and that could serve possibly as a catalyst for her alleged involvement, if she proclaims such involvement in the MRM, or just interest in men's rights in general. So I think we have a prominent example in Christina Hoff Sommers. Now, Christina Hoff Sommers is not someone I would identify, a female I would identify with male brain wiring, but she has sons. In fact, she wrote a book about it. How boys are getting screwed over in the school system. That her primary interest was, of course, the welfare and the improvement of the lot of her sons, and that is what sort of spurred her on to write other things and engage in debates and so on and so forth. But despite that, I don't believe she has male brain wiring. I think her primary interest came from the mother-son link, and that is, well, something that I'll discuss in a bit, the nature of that link and how strong that actually represents. It's represented in terms of its allegiance or interest in the actual movement itself. And let's talk about the much rarer aspect, that facet of the female being wherein it's possible that the female has male brain wiring. I can certainly Girl writes what indicates this, and she also has male progeny. Now, like I said, I'll talk about that in a second. But I think Typhon Blue might be, I don't know her nearly as well, but I think she might be a possible candidate for male brain wiring as well. I don't know what the status is regarding whether or not she has male progeny or not. So in that case, a woman might be in a position to have a rational, and I will argue philosophical, interest in men's rights, simply from the perspective of injustice versus justice, equality versus inequality, and so on and so forth. That is, of course, a very different animal to, and I don't mean animal and a very different thing, a very different creature than, but animal in the sense of thing. Yeah, don't get me wrong here. A different animal to the other sort of interest that might be spawned from simply having male progeny. Now, let's take Girl Writes What. By far, certainly in the month she's been on here, barely a year, and she has almost as many subs as some famous makeup channels on YouTube. The most famous MRA on YouTube, and then she's also a female. There are lots of reasons for that, and it's been talked about at length, and we all probably know what the reasons are. She presents really well. She's kind of witty. She's a female. She's not aggressive, and so on and so forth. So that all comes across in a really good way, in a really good manner, and so on and so forth. Not that relevant here. But I think Girl Writes What combines very interesting aspects. I mean, the twofold aspect to Girl Writes What is A, she's has male brain wiring. That was a Spoonerism, if ever there was a Spoonerism. Male brain wiring. B, she, by her own admission, has always had a oppositional feeling towards politicized feminism, even since high school. I remember either reading a comment or listening to something to that effect that she might have said on radio or one of her videos. So, long time opposition to politicized feminism, male brain wiring, and on top of that, she has male progeny. And of course, as a mother, and I will assume that she actually does love her children, that she has an interest in propagating or looking after the welfare of her sons. So that seems to me an extremely powerful combination. And for those people who doubt the legitimacy of Girl Writes What, I don't think she would be making videos about African male rape victims raped in essentially these jungle wars where they have screwdrivers shoved up their anuses and they're bleeding feces, and really talking with regards to the male suffering. If she didn't have a legitimate interest, it would serve no purpose. So I think she's completely legit. And she has that powerful combination of A, male brain wiring, and then of B, having male sons, male progeny. So there's that. But, and I believe she has a strong philosophical allegiance to men's rights. The detection of understanding of what is justice and injustice and so on and so forth. You will not find that to that degree in a female who takes interest in men's rights simply because she has male progeny. She might have more of an interest depending on her individual characteristics than the next woman, but to have that philosophical interest and that philosophical allegiance, I think you do need to have that sort of male brain wiring, that ability to understand what's going on that level. And that's pretty much it, folks. I don't think many women outside of that paradigm qualify, and so we can talk about the women who might claim to be but are not. We know, as we've just discussed, that a female's primary interest apart from her own welfare is the interest of her direct progeny. That means if she has female progeny, I will make the near axiomatic and categorical statement here that it is highly unlikely to impossible that a female mother with daughters, with female progeny, that is not possessed of male brain wiring will have any interest in men's rights whatsoever. A, because it's to her own detriment. B, much more importantly, it's because of the detriment of her female child. She will, of course, wants to see her female child do at least as well as she does in life, to garner the same advantages and benefits that she does in life. And so, of course, it would be to her own detriment, and it would lead to a loss of those advantages if she championed or advocated for men's rights. The daughter, of course, is also a woman or will be a woman, and so she will benefit from the female entitlement that is chock-a-block, everywhere in society. To dismantle that entitlement system, either psychologically, politically, socially, that would, of course, have negative consequences for both herself and her daughter. She would never do that. So I think you can pretty much categorically say or state that no woman with female progeny, no mother with a daughter, or only daughters, at least that, as opposed to having a mixture of, say, daughters and sons, will champion or advocate for men's rights. It's simply not in their interest. People, at the end of the day, do things in their own interest or in the interest of their so-called group to a lesser extent. And so that's simply not going to happen. I don't even think they would make comments or they would even profess any sort of interest whatsoever in that sense. You might get, of course, women with daughters along the traditionalist line. In fact, you see it all the time, who will spout lines like men need to take charge and blah, 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 and so on. But we know what that's all about. So there's that. women women with neither daughters nor male brain wiring, nor male progeny, nor sons, who simply say they have an interest in it. I wouldn't say categorically are not really interested or really into men's rights, but I think you could at least say it's a dubious case. Be skeptical about them. A lot of these, of course, are revealed to be what they are quite quickly. If you actually engage in a debate, you'll either hear in my experience, the two most common things are either Nawalt deflections, or even much more common than that is men do it too. And the minute you hear that, you know that they're not legit, because what we're doing here is examining men's positions in life and society, and what women are doing, and how female behavior affects male behavior, and so on and so forth. So instead of reflecting on their own behavior and their fellow females' behavior, they do the finger pointing and say, well, men do it too. You would immediately know what sort of woman that is, and that she has absolutely nothing to do with men's rights in such a case. So that's pretty clear as well. So I think we do have criteria that we can go on in assessing whether a woman is legitimate or not. And based on my observations over the past couple of months, I think it really is a solid idea. If only because, like I said, I know a traditionalist woman who's quite bright, who understands everything that's going on, but she obviously lacks male brain wiring. She has no children, to my knowledge, and so she has the intelligence, the native intelligence, and yet she still throws herself into the traditionalist lot and pledges allegiance to that team, if you will. So no, it's not as mysterious as it might seem. I think we do have criteria, and also remember, like I said, I enjoin you to remember that a female with male progeny, and that being her sole motivation, as opposed to say a combination of male brain wiring or having sons, just having or having male brain wiring and no sons. She might have no qualms about screwing over other men, screwing over her partner, the father of the children. She probably has screwed over past partners. It's really just about the son in that case. So rather than talking about universal issues such as men's rights and men's lot in life, she can really gloss over that other stuff. So even in cases like that, it's quite dubious, and I think suspicion is warranted. We should always be suspicious of women, not anti-women, but suspicious of women making that claim, unless it's really crystal clear that they're possessed of male brain wiring, as well as male progeny, either or, particularly with the male brain wiring, and really have shown this time and again, such as Girl Writes What. I mean, look at her videos. I think the evidence is just ample there. It's right in front of us. We know what she's about. I think the same could be said more or less for Typhon Blue, although I'm not quite as familiar with her work as I am with Girl Writes What, but I like a lot of the stuff she does, and she seems to have male brain wiring by all accounts. Of course, it's not sufficient, as I saw one of the comments in Eugene's video, to simply say, well, I think it was some woman, she wrote something to the effect of her index finger was longer than some others, and so that's an indication of male brain wiring. I don't know if that's some random woman making a comment on YouTube is not sufficient, of course. So we do have the criteria. I think we can reasonably assess whether a woman is true or trustworthy, or at least legitimate with regards to men's rights or not. Of course, we don't always have direct access to a female's personal profile, and of course, I think that's only something that a female can reveal, whether she chooses to reveal that or not. So we just don't know at the end of the day. If we do have access to their profile, whether they have children or not, whether those children are daughters or sons, or whether they have male brain wiring based on their writings or what have you. Well, anyway, there's that. A final note, I would argue that even fathers, even men with female progeny, will be at least much less likely inclined to advocate for men's rights, or at least do so in a much more constrained manner. I think we've seen this in some cases. for the simple reason that to most men, the most important thing really is their genetic legacy. And we all know this, daddy's little princess and how concerned fathers are for the welfare of their daughters, whereas sons are rarely given the same sense of compassion and oversight and worrying, if you will. So I think even a male, with very few exceptions, I mean, Warren Farrell seems to be one prominent exception, will be much less likely, not impossible in the same sense as a woman, but if for example, if a male lives in an all-female household, he says 2 daughters and a wife, it's very unlikely. I mean, he will be up against so much opposition, like I said, with the prominent exception of Warren Farrell, where he simply is not in a position to advocate for male rights because everything there is about female rights and make sure the women and the females do well there. Never mind getting past his own instincts of subordinating himself, his own welfare, and his own sense of self-importance and self-worth to the alleged superior value of his female counterparts, be it his blood, his direct daughters, or his mate, his partner. So I think even in the case of men with female progeny, they're might be much less likely to want to either help their fellow men or to even see it from that angle. If they do so, in my experience, it seems to be quite constrained. So they're less likely to advocate for universal men's rights and much more likely to, well, I think we've seen how that goes. Anyway, so that's what I have to say about that topic. I do think we have these criteria, and we can use it if we have the some bit of personal knowledge about the said female to make an assessment as to whether or not they're legitimate or not. But certainly, as I think Barbarossa had made this statement over a year ago, almost a year ago, that yes, there will be many infiltrators. I've made the same statement, similar effect, that of illegitimate women entering the MRA saying, well, I'm interested in men's rights. And hey, Eugene hit the nail on the head. Women have always been about themselves and their kids. That's what they're about. And sometimes they're just about themselves. I mean, like I said, that's not a consistent thing, them being about them, being about them and their kids. Sometimes it's just about them. So we have to be on the lookout for that, I think. But certainly we have, like I said, the tools at our disposal. We can definitely make an assessment. We can pass judgment. We can make a call based on that. Anyway, thanks very much for making the video, Eugene. Appreciate it. And thanks for watching, and I'll see you all later. Take care.